So the harvest means to gather in the good results of your earlier work. In the farming world, to harvest is to reap the benefits of everything that you sowed earlier in the year, to take in the nourishment, the food, the fruits and vegetables that matured and grew out of your earlier work of planting. But we're not really farmers anymore, most of us. Anybody a farmer here? You might have a garden, but 40 acres and a mule? No, probably not. Most of us are not farmers now. So to harvest for us means to receive some fair benefit for the work that you have done. As I mentioned earlier, often in our culture, you will see women who have worked all their lives, yet they never see the benefit of that work. They end up with very little to show for all their hard work. And this is the cruelty of the patriarchal system. Now, Z. Budapest, a teacher of mine, said a long time ago to me, patriarchy is theft. It is theft of woman's energy and work and Shakti. The patriarchal system, which would not be able to function without all our unpaid work.
Yep.
It would fall down like instantly if it were not for women holding it up and yet not receiving the harvest of all that work that we have done. This is patriarchy expecting women to continue working and not wanting her to be aware that she deserves to take her harvest. Here's a few examples. The woman who has raised a family and worked all her life, and at age 65 or 70 is now living meagerly on her small Social Security check in a rented apartment with an old car. The woman who worked while her husband went to medical school. She put him through medical school. He became a doctor. And then, I see some people are like, oh yeah, I know this story.
Trophy bride.
Yeah. He became a doctor, went into practice. Then he divorced her and left her with very little. And she had to start again, almost from scratch, to rebuild her life. She did not take her harvest. She did not take her harvest. The woman who worked loyally and diligently for a company for many years, only to find out that she was training, and this was me for a while, she was training many men who went on to higher paying positions over her within that company while she stayed as a lowly manager or secretary after 20 years. And some man that she trained years ago is now the CEO of the goddamn company. What the hell? No, that woman is not taking her harvest. That's why I left that company. To know what your harvest is, as we said earlier, you first must know what your work is. What have you put your time and effort into? Did you or are you raising a family? Did you or do you have a career? Did you or are you building a business? What has been your primary work? In working, you have to have some idea of why you were working and what you expected to come out of your work. If you raised a family, for example, my mom worked very hard as a housewife, as they called it.
Unpaid labor.
Unpaid labor, completely. She worked very hard, and she kind of had a vague idea what her harvest would be. In her mind, she would grow old with her husband, and they'd have a little white picket fence, and she'd have adult children who loved her, and everything would be so hunky-dory and wonderful. And that didn't pan out for her at all. It was largely my dad's fault that didn't pan out, but not entirely. A lot of it was that she didn't know how to take her harvest. She didn't know how to have the boundaries to claim it. And so it got taken away from her. If you don't know how to claim your harvest and you don't know how to hold boundaries so that can keep happening and you can keep moving towards your harvest, then somebody else is going to take it. Somebody else is going to take it. You have to have an idea of what your harvest looks like to you. If you built a business, did you expect to make a good profit to allow you a comfortable retirement? And does that look like that's going to happen? What does your good harvest look like to you? All harvests can be bitter, sweet, bittersweet, difficult. Not every harvest is fantastic. And it's not necessarily your fault. A harvest can be something unexpected and unwanted. You put the work in, but somehow it went wrong. And that happens, not necessarily your fault. It might have been that you weren't paying attention. It might have been that you didn't know how to hold boundaries. It might have been that you were totally conditioned by patriarchy, but it also might not have been your fault at all, because you can do all of those things and still in this dominator model culture, not take in a harvest. Consider that a farmer can work hard, plant good seed, tend and till her garden, but because the soil was subpar, still she does not see a good harvest. The soil for your harvest could be thought of as your childhood environment, how you grew up. Some of us had good soil. Some of us had loving parents, a stable environment, and enough resources to live decently. That's good soil, but not all of us were so fortunate. If you had a very difficult child, it may be that you are still working with poor soil. It may be that you are still carrying the challenges of that environment that was no fault of yours, but is still affecting you even now as an adult. You are not at fault for poor growing conditions, but you are still responsible for making your harvest the very best it can be. And there are remediation, soil remediation techniques that we teach in the Queen Teachings. If you have not harvested your work, you will feel a sense of disgruntlement with life, a feeling of dissatisfaction, perhaps a vague sense of victimhood. You may also feel tired all the time, let down, disgusted with life in general. These are signs of a woman who, for whatever reason, has not been able to reap her good harvest for herself. You know that you are getting a good harvest in. And of course, there are all these cycles for harvest. It's a life cycle, and it's like the daily cycle. You know you've received a good harvest when you have a feeling of satisfaction and fulfillment at the conclusion of some cycle of life. Everything falls within cycles, including harvests. So you can harvest each day, and this is what I do, by sitting quietly before you go to bed and journaling on how the day went. You can review your choices. You can come to grips with what was good, what was bad. You can appreciate what was a blessing. You can try to learn from the challenges. You can tally up your small victories, because every day has some little small victories. Some days go better than others. When you harvest your day at the end of the day, it's like digesting your day, like really taking it in. And this makes your life richer and fuller. And it also helps you remember your life better, because a lot of women don't remember big chunks of their life. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Like a whole freaking decade can go by and you maybe remember like 2 things that happened. Oh my goddess, how many people have had that experience? I have. That's like, wow, how can that be? It's because we didn't harvest every day. We didn't seed it in our bodies and our memory. Let your life be rich and full by harvesting your day. The yearly harvest, you can harvest the year, typically in the fall, but you can also do this at the end of the secular year. You can go through your calendar and you can journal. You can remember the major events and victories and lessons of the year, and you can absorb what goodness you can. This is digesting your life. It makes it richer. And you can harvest something after a major life event. It can be something good that you consider good, or something bad. Your kids leaving the house, you can harvest that. That's the conclusion of your life as a mother with children at home. Your retirement from a career, you're being fired from a job. That's the end of something important. You should harvest it. There's probably something good in there for you. Divorcing. You must always, if you divorce or you end a major relationship with a man, you must sit down and you must harvest something from that as best you can. A death. For over 30 years, I took care of my mom, and she was in very poor health. And my gosh, it just seemed to go on forever. When she died, I knew about how to harvest. I'd worked for 33 years taking care of her, and I knew when she crossed that I had to sit down and harvest everything I could from that 33 years of work. I reflected on what a good mother she had been my entire life, how fortunate I was to have such a good mother, how satisfying it felt to provide her with care in return when she needed it. I took time to reflect on all the many sacrifices that I realized much later that she had made for me to have a good life growing up. I remember, and I found out these things like much later. I didn't know, she never mentioned him at the time. I remember when I was 14, I'd been bugging my parents for a horse for like forever. And we were poor, there was no money for a damn horse. One year I got a horse and I was like thrilled. And I didn't know that the big conversation had been with my mom and dad had been, well, we need a new refrigerator. We need a new roof on the house. We need this, we need that. But no, Ava's going to get a horse. And I didn't know that. Here was another one that I didn't know. And she mentioned this one. This was shocking to me, but she mentioned it almost casually offhand. My mom was obsessed with our teeth being taken care of because her teeth were not taken care of when she was a child. She was neglected. And so she was determined that her two kids were going to have proper dental care. Well, we never had any money. My dad was an adventurer, a pirate. He was always off looking for buried treasure and never found any. She would take us to the dentist, but she never had any money to pay the dentist. I found out years later that she freaking slept with the dentist to pay him for our dental work. She had sex with a man that she did not want to have sex with, that she was not attracted to, that she wouldn't have had sex with under any other goddamn circumstances. And he was just a bullshit creep enough to ask her to trade that. And it wasn't just one time. It was over a period of a few years. She had sex with him quietly, never told my father, of course. And he never asked. She paid the dental bill. He never asked. And that's what my mother, Ethel Ramsey Bolton, did for me. When I think about that, it makes all my hours of caretaking her completely worth it. Because I got good teeth now. Thank you, Ma. Thank you, Ma. So that's a mother's sacrifice. So I took time to really absorb and appreciate all these gifts that she had given me. And that's what I feel that the years of taking care of my mom provided a very rich harvest indeed. I feel so close to her, even though she's dead. I talk to her all the time. How to fully receive your harvest. Be aware that if you work, if you make an effort, you are entitled to a harvest. Men assume this automatically, but women in patriarchy must be reminded. Be clear at the outset of any major engagement to which you are going to give your life's effort, just exactly what you think that harvest is going to be. Make sure you know what it is. Make sure you know what it is. Set your intention to receive it. Now, women always balk at this, but I'm telling you, ask yourself, what is in it for me? Because women very rarely ask that. I'm going to do this thing. What is in it for me? You are absolutely entitled to ask, what is in it for me? Then there must be something in it for you. Else, are you just sacrificing your whole life for others? Make adjustments along the way. If the adjustments don't pan out, acknowledge to yourself that your harvest didn't turn out the way you wanted. What thwarted your harvest? Did you lack boundaries? Did you have no clarity on what was happening? Were you deceived somehow? My mom was. My dad kind of told her that everything was going to be great, but he never did anything to make it great. And she was tricked. Did someone die unexpectedly? My dear friend Vajra, she was looking for a harvest with her husband of 20 years. They were going to retire and she had a plan. And then he died unexpectedly, very suddenly. That's your mom. Yes, that's a bitter harvest. That's a hard one. Yeah, he died 2 years ago. That's a bitter one. Think about what your harvest should be. Think about if you're actually working to make that come true and what your boundaries need to be. And if something goes wrong, ask yourself, what could you do differently to secure a better harvest from your work next time? Every life contains many good things to harvest. At the end of each major cycle of your life, bring to mind the good things that you can harvest from your effort, from your work, and take that in with gratitude. And always ponder gently, what can I do better next time to fully receive a wonderful harvest from my good work? Blessed be.
Blessed
Blessed
be.
be. All right. Harvesting the fruits of our labors.